and answer your
出席今
questions.
天新闻发布会的还有国家统计局新闻发言人、
We also have the
国民经
spokesperson of the
济综合
MBS,
统计司司长傅林辉先生。
Mr. Fu Linghui.
下面我们首先请康义先
Now
生
let
做
me
介
give the
绍。
floor to Mr. Kang.
好，谢谢主持人。
Thank
媒
you.
体朋友们，大家
Dear
好。
friends from the press, good
很
morning.
高兴啊，
It's a
来
great
参
pleasure
加今天的
to be
新闻发
here
布会，
for this
与
press
大家
conference
交流国民经济运行情况。
to talk
首
about
先呢，
economic
我介绍一
operation
下
in China in
2022年
2022.
国民经济运行的整体情况，
Now let
然
me
后呢，
give you a general
再回
briefing.
答记者朋
After
友们
that,
的
I
提
will
问。
take up your questions.
2022年
In
面对啊
2022,
风高浪急的
faced
国际
with
环
a
境
challenging
和艰
global
巨繁重
environment
的
and
国
arduous
内
tasks
改
at
革发
home
展
in
稳定任务，
maintaining reform,
在
development
以
and
习近平同志
stability,
为核心
and
的
the
党
strong
中央
leadership of the
坚
CPC
强领
Central
导下，
Committee with Comrade Xi
各
Jinping
地
at
区
its
各部
core,
门认
different
真贯彻落
localities
实
and
党中央、国务院
departments
决策部署，
carefully implemented the
坚持
decisions and
稳
plans
中
of the
求进
CPC
工作
Central
总基
Committee
调
and the State Council,
高
maintained
效
the
统
general
筹
approach of
疫
maintaining
情防
stability
控
while seeking
和
progress,
经济社会发展，
coordinated pandemic
有
control
效
and
应
social
对
and economic
内
development,
外部挑战，
and effectively coped
国
with
民经济
domestic
啊
and
顶住压力，持续发展，
external challenges. Our
经济
economy
总量
continued to grow
再
despite
上
pressure,
新台
and
阶，
the total economic
就业、
output made
物
new
价
progress.
总体
We
稳定，
maintained stability in
人民
employment
生
and
活
prices,
持续改
continued to
善，
improve the people's
高质量
lives,
发展，取
and
得
made new
新
progress
的成
in
效，
high
经
quality
济社会
growth.
大局
The
和
general
谐
economy and
稳定。
society maintained in
初步
harmonious
核算了，
and stable
今年
conditions.
国内生产总值
According to preliminary
121
estimates,
万亿元，
our GDP was
按不变价格计算，比上年增长
120.7 billion yuan
3%。
at constant prices.
分
It
产业
grew
看，
by
第一
3%
产业增加值
year on year. By industry,
8.8
the
万
primary
亿元，
industry
比上年增
increased
长
8,834.5
4.1%。第二
billion in
产业
value
增加
added,
值
4.1% over
48.3
that of
万亿
last
元，
year. For the secondary
增长
industry, it was
第三
48,316.4
产业
billion,
增加值
3.8 percentage points of
63.9 万亿元，
increase. The tertiary
增长
industry was up by
2.3%。
3,869.8
分季
billion
度
yuan,
看，
up by
一
2.3%.
季度国内
In
生
the
产
first
总
quarter, the
值同比
GDP
增长
was up by
4.8%，
4.8%
二季
year
度
on year. In the
增
second
长
quarter, it was up by
0.4%，
0.4%.
三季度
In the
增
third
长
quarter, it was up
3.9%，
by
四季
3.9%,
度
and in the
增
fourth
长
quarter,
2.9%。
it was up by 2.9% year on year.
一呢是全年粮食
We have
增产
seen
丰收，畜牧业生产
good
稳
harvest
定增长。
and steady growth in animal
全年啊，
husbandry
全国粮食
products.
总产量
Total grain output
6.9万
was
亿吨，比上年
690
增
million
加
tons,
368万
up
吨，
by 3.68 million tons over
0.5%。
the previous year,
其中
a
夏粮
0.5
产量
percentage increase.
1.5
Summer
亿吨，
grains reached
增长1%，
150 million tons,
早
up
稻
by
产量
1%, and early rise
0.3万亿
in
吨，增长0.4%。
was up by
秋粮产量
0.4%.
5.1亿吨，
Autumn
增
grain
长0.4%。
511
分
million
品种
tons,
看，
up by
稻谷产量
0.4%. In
2.1
terms
亿
of the
吨，
different
下降
varieties,
2.0%
rice was 208 million,
小麦产量
0.48 million,
1.4亿吨，
down by 2%.
增长
Wheat was
0.6%.
137.72 million, up by
2.8亿吨，
0.6%.
增长
Corn was
1.7%.
280 million tons, up
大
by
豆产量
1.7%.
0.2亿吨，
And the
增长
beans was
23.7%。油料产量
28 million tons, up by
0.4亿吨，增
23.7%.
长
Oil-bearing crops
1.1%。
was 36.53 million tons, up by
猪、牛、
1.1%.
羊、禽肉产量
And pork, beef, mutton, and
9227万吨，
poultry
比
reached
上年增长
92.27 million tons,
3.8%。
up by
其中
3.8%.
猪肉产量
Pork production
5541万吨，
was
增长 4.6%。
55.41 million tons, up by 4.6%. Beef
增长 3%。
7.18 million tons, up
羊
by
肉产量
3%. Mutton
525万吨，
5.25 million tons, up by 2%.
禽肉产量
Poultry
2443万
24.43
吨，
million tons,
增长
up by 2.6%.
牛奶产量
Milk,
3932万吨，
39.32 million
增长
tons, up by
6.8%。
6.8%.
禽蛋产量
Eggs,
3456万吨，增长
34.56 million tons, up by
4%。
1.4%.
年末，生猪成栏4.5亿头，
450 million tons of pigs were registered in stock,
全年生猪出栏
and
7亿头，
700 million
4.3%。
pigs were slaughtered and marketed, up by
工业生产
4.3%.
持续
Industrial
发展，
growth continued,
高技术制造业
and
装备制造业
particularly
较快
high-tech
增长。
manufacturing and equipment manufacturing saw rapid
全
growth.
国规模
The
以上
value-added of
工业增加
industrial
值
enterprises above a
比上年增长
designated size grew by
3.6%。
3.6% year-on-year.
分三大门类看，
By
采矿业
industry,
增加值
mining
增长
grew by
7.3%，
7.3%.
制造业增长
Manufacturing
3%，
was up by
电力
3%.
热力
The
燃
production
气
and
及水
supply
生
of
产和供应
electricity, thermal power,
增
and
长
gas and
5%。
water was up by 5%.
高技术制造业
The value
装
added
备
of
制造
high-tech
业增加值
manufacturing and equipment
分别增
manufacturing
长
was up by
7.4%
7.4% and
5.6%，
5.6%
增速
respectively.
分别比规模以上
They
工业快 3.8、
3.8
2.0个百分
and
点。
2 percentage points faster
分
than the
经济类
industry
型
average,
看，
respectively.
国有控股企业增
By
加
the
值
different
增长
types,
3.3%，
state-owned
股份制企
State-holding
业
enterprises
增
was up
长
by 3.3%, shareholding prices 4.8%. Those funded by foreign
港澳
investors,
台商
investors from Hong
投
Kong,
资
Macau,
企
and
业
Taiwan
下降
were down by
1%，
1%,
私营企业
and
增
private
长
companies up
2.9%。
was up by
分产品
2.9%.
看，
By
新能源
products,
汽车
the production of new
移动
energy
通信
vehicle,
基
mobile
站设备
communication base
工业
station,
控制计
industrial
算机
control
及系
computer
统
and
产量
systems
分别增长
were up by
97.5%、
97.5%, 16.3%, and
15%。
15% respectively.
12月份
In December,
规模以上工
the
业增
value
加值
added of
同比
industrial
增长
enterprises above the designated
1.3%，
size was up by
环比增长
1.3% year-on-year and
0.06%。 一至
0.06%
11月
over
份，
the
全国
previous
规模
year.
以上
From
工
January
业
to
企业
November,
实
the
现利
total
润
profit of
总
these
额
enterprises
7.7万
was
亿元，同比下降
7.7 trillion yuan,
3.6%。
down by 3.6% year
服务
on year.
业
Third,
保持恢复，
the service
现代服务
sector
业
continued to
增势
recover
较
and
好，
modern services
全年
experienced good
服务业
development.
增加值
The value
同比
added of
增
the
长
service sector over the year was up by
2.3%。 其中
2.3%.
信息
In
传
terms
输
of information
软件
transmission software
和
and
信息技术
IT
服务业、
services and
金融业
the
增加值
financial industry,
分
the
别增长
increase was
9.1%、
9.1%,
5.6%。
5.6%.
12月份
In
服务业生
December,
产指数同比下降
the index of service production
0.8%，
was down by
降幅
0.8%
上月收窄
year-on-year. The
1.1
decline
个百分
narrowed
点。
by 1.1 percentage point.
一至11月份，
From January to
规模以
November,
上服务
business
业企
revenue
业
of
营
services
业收
above the
入同
designated
比增
size
长 3.9%。
grew by
其中
3.9%
信
year-on-year.
息传输软件和
And for
信息
information
技术服务
transformation
业、
software, IT
科学研究
services,
和技
scientific
术服务业、
research and
卫
technology
生
services,
和社会工作
healthcare
企
and
业
social
营业收入
work,
分别增长
their revenues increased
8.3%、
by 8.3%,
8.3% 和
8.3%,
8.1%。
and 8.1% respectively.
四、市场
Fourth,
销售规模基本稳
market
定，
sales
基
remained
本生
generally
活类商
stable
品
and sales
销
of
售
daily
和网
necessities
上
and online
零售
sales
增长较快。
grew fast.
全年
Total retail
社
sales
会
of consumer goods
消
over
费
the
品
year was
零售总额44万亿元，
44
比上年下降
billion yuan, down by
0.2%。
0.2% over
按
last
经营单
year.
位所在地
By
分，
areas in
城
urban
镇消费品
areas,
零售
it
额
was
38万亿元，下降
38,000
0.3%。
billion yuan, down by
乡村消费品
0.3%.
零售额
In rural
5.9万
areas,
亿元，
it was
与上年持平。
5.9 trillion yuan. At
按
the
消
same
费
level with
类
last
型分
year,，
商品零售
the sales of
39.6万亿
consumer
元，
goods
增长
was
0.5%。
36.9
餐饮收
trillion
入
yuan, up by
4.4万亿
0.5%.
元，下
Catering
降
for
6.3%。
4.4
基
trillion
本
yuan,
生
down
活
by
消费稳定增
6.3%.
长，限额以
Basic
上
life
单位粮油食品类、
basic
饮料类
commodities
商品零
increased
售额
steadily, and
比
the
上年
sales
分
of
别
food,
增长
beverages, and oil
8.7%、
by
5.3%。
enterprises above designated size increased
全
by
国网上零售
8.7%
额
and 5.3%
13.8万亿
respectively.
元，
Online
比
sales
上
of
年增
consumer
长
goods
4%。
was
其中，
14 trillion yuan,
实物
up
商
by
品网上零售
4%.
额
And
12
the
万亿元，
sales of consumer
增
goods
长
online
6.2%。
by 12
占
trillion yuan,
社
up by
会消费品零
6.2%,
售总额的比
accounting
重
for
为
27.2% of the total retail sales. In
社会
December,
消费品零售总额
the
同比
sales
下降
was down
1.8%，
by 1.8%. On a
比
monthly
上月
basis, the decline
有收
narrowed
窄
by
4.1个百分点，
4.1 percentage
环比
points
下
than
降
last year,
0.14%。
and a 0.14%
固定资产投资
fall
平稳增
on
长，
a monthly basis.
高技术产业
Fixed
投资
asset
真
investment
是较
increased
好。
steadily, and good investment was
全年
registered
全
in
国
high-tech
固定资产投
industries.
资
Total fixed
不含
asset
农户
investment
是
excluding
57.2
rural
万亿元，
households was
比上年增长
57.2
5.1%。
trillion yuan, up by
分领域看，
5.1%. By
基础
areas
设施
in
投资增
infrastructure,
长
it grew by
9.4%， 制造业投
9.4%.
资
In
增长
manufacturing, it was up by
9.1%， 房地产开
9.1%.
发
In
投资
property
下
development,
降
it was down by
10%。
10%.
全国
The
商
sales
品房
of
销售面积
commercial housing by floor space
13.6亿
was
平方米，下降 24.3%。
1,036.
商品房销售额
360 million square
13.3万
meters,
亿
down
元，
by
下降
24.3%, and
26.7%。
the sales revenue was
分
down
产
by
业看，
26.7%.
第一产
By
业投资增
industry,
长
the primary industry saw an
0.2%，
increase of investment
第二产业
of
投资增长
0.2%. In the secondary
10.3%，
industry, it was
第
up
三
by
产业投资增长
10.3%. In the tertiary
3%，
industry, it was up by
民
3%.
间投资增长
Private investment increased by
0.9%，
0.9%,
高技术产业投资
and
增长
investment in high-tech industries grew by
18.9%， 快易全部投
18.9%,
资
which was
13.8个百分点，
13.8 percentage points
其中
faster than total
高技术
investment
制造
in
业、
high-tech
高技
manufacturing
术
and
服务
high-tech
业
services.
投资分别增
Investment
长
increased by
22.2%、
22.2% and
12.1%。
12.1% respectively.
高技术制造
In
业中，
high-tech
医
manufacturing,
疗仪器设备
the
及
manufacturing of
仪器
medical
仪
appliances
表
and
制造业、
dashboards,
电子及通信
electronic
设备
and
制造业投资
telecommunications
分别
equipment
增长
saw an increased investment of
27.6%、
27.6% and
27.2%。
27.2%.
高技术服务
In
业中，
high-tech
科技
services,
成果转
those
化服务
for
业、
applying
研发设计服
scientific
务业投资
research and
分别增长
the services
26.4%、
enterprises saw an increase in investment by 26.4% and
社
19.8%.
会领域投资增长
Investment in
10.9%。
social sectors increased by 10.9%. In
教育投资
healthcare and
分别增长
education, it grew by
27.3%、
27.3% and 5.4%. In
固定资产
December,
投资
fixed
环比
asset
增长
investment was up by
0.49%。
0.49% on a monthly basis.
货物进出口
Sixth,
较快
import
增
and
长，
export of goods
贸易结构
increased
持
at a
续
fast
优化，
pace, and the trade structure
全年
continued to improve.
货物进出
Total
口额
import and export of
42.1
goods
万
was
亿元，比上年增长 7.7%， 其中出口
1.42.1 trillion yuan, up
24
by
亿元，增长
7.7%.
4.5%，
Export
进
was
口
24 trillion
18.1
yuan,
万亿
up by
元，增长
10.5%.
4.3%。
Import was 18 trillion
进出口相
yuan,
抵，
up by
贸易顺差
4.3%.
5.9
Trade
万亿
balance
元，
was 5.9 trillion
一
yuan.
般贸易进出口增长
General trade was
11.5%，
up by
但进出口总额的比
11.5%,
重
accounting
为
for
63.7%，
63.7% of
提
total
高了
imports and exports,
2.2
up
个
by
百分点。
2.2 percentage points than the
民营
previous
企业进
year.
出口增长
The imports and exports of private
12.9%，
companies was up
占
by
进出口总额的比重
12.9%,
为
which is
50.9%，
50.9%
比
of
上
total
年
imports and
又
exports,
提高
up
了
by 2.3
2.3个
percentage
百分点。
points than the previous
机电
year.
产品
The
进出口
imports and
增长
exports of electric and
2.5%，
mechanical
占进
products
出
was
口
up
总
by
额的比重为
2.5%, which is
49.1%。
49.1% of the total
12
imports and
月份
exports. In
货物进出口
December,
总额 3.8 万
imports
亿
and
元，
exports of goods was
增长
3.8 trillion yuan,
0.6%，
up by
其
0.6%
中
year
出口
on year.
2.2 万亿元，
Export was
下降
2.2 trillion yuan, down by
进口
0.5%.
1.6 万亿
Import
元，
was
增长
1.6 trillion yuan, up by
2.2%。
2.2%.
7. 居民
Seven,
消费价格
CPI
温和上涨，
grew
工业
in a
生产
moderate pace,
者
and
价
the
格
prices of
涨幅回落。
PPI fell
全年居
to
民
a
消费
lower
价
level.
格比
CPI
上年上涨
was up by
2%。
2%
分类别
year
看，
on year by
食
categories:
品烟酒
food,
价格上涨 2.4%，
and
衣着价格
cigarettes was up
上
by
涨
2.4%,
0.5%，
clothing
居住
0.5%,
价格
housing
上涨
0.7%,
0.7%， 生活
daily
用品
necessities
及
and
服务价格
services
上涨
up by
1.2%，
1.2%,
交通通
transportation
讯
and
价格上涨
telecommunications up by
5.2%，
2%, education, culture and entertainment up by 1.8%, healthcare up by 0.6%, other products and services were up by 1.6%. In terms of food, alcohol, and tobacco, pork was down by 6.8%, grain was up by 2.8%, fresh vegetables was up by 2.8%, fresh fruits was up by 12.9%. Core CPI stripped of food and energy prices was up by 0.9%. In December, CPI grew by 1.8% year-on-year, and it was generally stable as November. PPI was up by 4.1% year-on-year. In December, it fell by 0.7% year-on-year and 0.5% on a monthly basis. The purchasing prices of industrial producers was up by 6.1% over the year. In December, it was up by 0.3% year-on-year and down by 0.4% month-on-month. 8. Employment remained stable, and surveyed urban unemployment rate dipped to lower levels. Total new employed population was over 12 million, exceeding the year-round target of 11 million. In December, the surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas was 5.5%, down by 0.2 percentage points than last year. Unemployment rate of those with local household registration was 5.4%. For those with registration from other areas was 5.7%. The surveyed unemployment rate of those with rural household registration was 5.4%. The rate for those aged between 16 and 24 was 16.7%, down by 0.4 percentage point from last year. The rate for those aged between 28 and 59 was 4.8%, down by 0.2 percentage point. In 31 big cities, the surveyed unemployment rate was 6.1%, down by 0.6 percentage point than the previous year. In business enterprises, the average working hours per week was 47.9 hours. Total rural migrant workers were numbered at 295 million, up by 3.11 million, an increase of 1.1%. Local migrant workers registered 123 million, up by 2.4%. And those working in other areas were numbered at 171 million, up by 0.1%. Their average monthly income was 4,650 yuan, up by 4.1%. 9th, the residential income increased at the same pace as economic growth, and income grew faster in rural areas than in urban areas. Total per capita disposable income was 36,883 yuan, a nominal growth of 5% after deducting price factors. It was a real growth of 2.9%, at the same pace as economic growth. By different areas, per capita disposable income in urban areas was 49,283 yuan, a nominal growth of 3.9% and a real growth of 1.9%. In rural areas, the per capita disposable income was 20,133 yuan, a nominal growth of 6.3% and a real growth of 4.2%. The median of per capita disposable income nationwide was 31,370 yuan, a nominal growth of 4.7%. By the income quintiles, the middle income group saw a per capita disposable income of 8,601 yuan. The lower middle income was 30,303 yuan. For the middle income group, it was 30,598. For the upper middle income group, it was 47,397. For the high income quintile, it was 90,116 yuan. Per capita expenditure on consumption was 24,538 yuan, a nominal growth of 1.8% and a fall of 0.2% after deducting price factors. 10th, the Chinese population declined, and urbanization rate continued to climb higher. Total population by the end of the year, including the residents in 31 provinces, autonomous regions, and municipalities under the direct management of central government and the service person, excluding the residents from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, and foreign nationals in these areas, was 1.411 billion people, down by 850,000. Total births was 9.56 million. The birth rate was 6.77 per thousand. Number of deaths was 10.41 million. The mortality rate was 7.37 per thousand. The natural growth rate was minus 0.6 per thousand. In terms of gender, the male population was 720 million and the female population 690 million. The general ratio is 104.69. In terms of age, those in working age between 16 and 59 years old was numbered at 880 million. 62% of total population. Those aged above 60 was 280 million. 19.8% of the total population. Those aged 65 and above was 210 million, 14.9% of the total population. In terms of urban-rural structure, in urban areas, the residents were numbered at 290 million, up by 6.46 million from the end of last year, 2021, and in rural areas it was 491.04 million, down by 7.31 million. Urban population accounted for 65.22% of the total population, up by 0.5 percentage points than the end of 2021. In 2022, we made good progress in coordinating pandemic response and economic and social development. We have been able to stabilize the general economy, continued to expand economic output, and enhance the quality of development. At the same time, we continue to face complex and challenging international environment. Domestic demand is shrinking, there are supply shocks and weakening expectations. The triple pressure remain significant. Economic recovery is not yet solidly established. Going forward, we will continue to be guided by Xi Jinping's thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era, fully implement the instructions of the 20th CPC National Congress and the Central Economic Work Conference, continue to maintain stability and seek progress while maintaining stability to better coordinate our two areas of work, promote coordinated development between security and economic growth, deepen reform and opening up, strengthen market confidence, stabilize growth, employment, and prices, and keep taking the economy in a good direction to realize an upgrade in quality and appropriate increase in quantity. Thank you. So this is my opening remarks. Thank you, Mr. Kang. Now the floor is open for questions. Please identify your media affiliation before asking your questions.
这边吧，第二排这位女记者。
谢主持人，中央广播电视总台央视记者提问。
Thank you.
2022年，我国经济运行受到国际形势、
We
国内
have
疫情、
faced some challenges
高温干旱等
in
多重
international
因素
environment and
的超
domestic
预期
challenges
因
such
素的
as
冲
high
击。
temperature
那么
and
如何
drought.
评价
How
2022
do you
年
see
中国经济运行的表现
the
？2022年
economic
GDP
performance
超
over
过
the
了
year
120万亿元，这
and
对中国
GDP
经济来说
exceeded
意味着什么？谢谢。
120 trillion yuan? What does it mean
谢
for the
谢
Chinese
你
economy?
的提问啊。盘点过去的一年啊，
Thank you for your
这
question.
是非常重要。
It is very important to look back
2022年
at the
啊，
previous year.
这个
In
百年变
2020,
局啊和世纪
the
疫情啊
compounded impact
是
of
交织
changes
叠
seen in the
加，
past century
地缘政治冲突呢
and
动荡
COVID-19,
不安，
together with
世界
geopolitical
经济啊
instabilities,
下行的
have
风险加大，
exerted more downward
国内经
risks
济
on the global
受到
economy.
疫情散
Domestically,
发多发、
China's economy
极端的高温
was
天气
affected by the
多重
sporadic
超
COVID
预期
cases,
因素的
extreme high temperatures,
反复冲击，
and other factors
这个
beyond
需求收缩
expectation.
啊，供给冲击，
We continue to
预期
face
转弱啊，
pressure
这
on
个
three
三重压
fronts,
力
namely
啊
the
在持续
contraction
的
of
演化
demand, shock on the supply
发
side,
展
and weaker
环境的复杂
expectations.
性、严
The
峻性、
environment of
不确定性
development
上升，
is increasingly
这个
complicated,
面对啊
severe, and
这个风
uncertain.
高浪急的国际环境
Against
和
high
艰
winds in the
巨
international
繁重的
environment and
国内
arduous
改革发展稳
tasks
定任务，
domestically
以
on
习
the
近平作为
reform,
核心的党中央啊，
development, and stability
团结带
front,
领
the
全党
CPC
全国
Central
各族人
Committee
民
with Comrade Xi Jinping
迎难
at its
而
core
上，
has rallied the whole
沉着
party
应对，
and the Chinese people of all
统筹
ethnic groups to respond
国内
properly
国际两
to
个大
the
局，
challenges we've
统筹疫
taken
情
into
防控
account
和经济社会
both
发展，
domestic and international
统筹
dynamics,
发展
coordinated COVID
和安
response
全，
with economic and social
加大
development,
宏观调控的
development
力
and
度，
security, and
有
we've
效应
intensified
对
macro
超预
regulation.
期因素的冲
With
击，
these efforts, we've
这个宏观
responded
经济大盘
effectively
啊
to
是总体
factors
稳
beyond
定，这个
expectations,
高质量发展了，取
and
得
our
新
macro
的成效，
economy on the whole
民生的
remained
保障呢
stable. New
也是
progress
持
has
续
been
加
made
强，
in high quality
经济社会
development,
大局
and
啊
better
保
safeguards
持
was provided
稳定。
to people.
那么综合来看呢，
Our
啊，这个有
society
这么
and
几个
our
方面的
economic
表
and
现，
social development
一个呢
overall
是这个综合国力
were
啊
stable.
再上
First,
新台阶。
China's overall
2022 年
national strengths
我国经济总量
achieved
啊突破了120万亿元，
new
达
progress.
到
In
121万亿。
2022, China's
这是
aggregate
继
economy
20
exceeded
20年
120 trillion
2021
yuan,
年啊，这个连续突破
stood at
这个
121
100万
trillion
亿
yuan.
啊
This is another
110万
breakthrough
亿之后
after
啊，这个又约上啊新的
crossing
台
the
阶。
threshold of 100 trillion and 110 trillion in 2020 and 2021,
我们
respectively.
120万亿
Counted by the annual average
折
exchange
合美
rate,
元呢，大概
the
是18亿
121 trillion yuan is around 18 trillion US
世界
dollars,
第二位。从人均水
second
平来
in the
看呢，
world.
这个
By GDP per
2022年
capita,
啊，我国人均
in
GDP
2022,
达到
GDP
了
per capita in China
85698元，
85,698
比上年呢是实
yuan,
际增长3%，
a real
按
growth of
年平均
3%
汇率
over the
折算呢，
previous year,
达到了
at an
12741
annual average exchange rate.
美元，这个连续
GDP
2
per
年
capita
啊
was
保持在
12,741, exceeding
1.2万美元以上。
12,000 US
那说
dollars
经济总量
for 2 years
和
running.
人均水平啊，这个持续提高。刚才
So we are
这个
seeing an increase in
朋友
both
问到
GDP
意味着
and
什么啊
the
这意味
overall
着我们
GDP and
的
GDP per
综合
capita.
国力
This means that
社会
China's
生产力
overall
国际
national
影响力
strengths, social
人民的生活水
productivity,
平
international
进一步的
influence, and
提升，
people's living standards
也意味着我国的
continue
发展基础更牢，
to
发展质量更优，发展
grow.
动力啊
And this also
更为
means
充沛
that
意味着我
China's
国经济
development
啊
is now more
韧
solidly
性
based,
强，
of a better
潜力
quality,
大，
and
空
with
间
more
广，
abundant
且
drivers.
长期
It
向好
also
的基
means
本
that our
面
economy
没有
has
改
strong
变。
resilience, big potential, and ample
当然呢，
space. The fundamental
这个也
sustaining
意味着
long-term sound
我们还
development
要
has not changed.
更加努力的接续奋斗。
That said, we need to make greater
我
efforts
们的
to continue
2035
our
年
good
的
work.
远景目标啊，是要人均
Our long-term goal
这个
for
国民收入啊
2035
要达到
is
中等
to
发达国家的水平。
let our GDP per capita
我们
achieve
目前
the
只有
level of middle-income
1.27
countries.
万美元。
Right
那么要
now,
达
the
到
number in China
这个中
is
期目标啊，我们还要增长啊，这 这个翻一番多啊，翻一番多。120
12.7 thousand US dollars. So we need to double that figure. The progress we've made is just one small step forward. We need to make greater efforts on that front. Second, overall economic performance remains stable. China's economic growth was faster than most major economies.
这个今年二季度啊，这个在二季度前期啊，这个受一些超预期因素的冲击
In the first few months of the second quarter of 2022, because of factors beyond expectations, we saw a decline in China's economy.
稳经济的一揽子政策。
And in response to that, the State Council timely rolled out a policy package to stabilize the economy.
刚才我们啊也跟大家通报了，
We've sustained pressure and our economy steadily rebounded. As I've said,
3%。
China's economy in 2022 saw a real growth rate of 3%.
这个国际的啊
This growth
主
rate,
要经济体
compared to
这
major
个也
economies
是
in
一
the
个比
world,
较高的速度
is
啊，比
a
较快的速度，比
relatively
较快的
high number.
这个现在德国啊已经
For
公布了
instance,
这个
Germany
预估数
has
啊
just
还是1.7%
announced
啊
estimates for
1.7%。
its GDP in
那么
2022, and that is
这个美
1.7%.
国、日本
And
这个经济
IMF,
体啊
according to its data,
，2022 年
show
的
that for the
GDP
US
增长
and
都
Japan,
不会超
their
过
GDP
2%，
growth
啊，不会超过2%。
in 2022 will
我们这
be
个
less
3
than 2%.
这个应该来讲啊，
So
在这么多
China's
的超预期
3%
因
growth,
素啊反复冲击下
given
啊，
shocks coming from factors beyond expectation,
比较啊这个快的啊一个增长速度，一个
is
增长
a
速度。
relatively
另外呢，就是我们
mean
的就
a
业形势
relatively
啊
high
总体稳
speed
定
growth
啊。
for the economy.
那么全年新增
Unemployment,
这个
we've
1206
seen
万
overall
的
stability as well.
这个城
Last
镇
year,
啊就业人员，
12.06 million new urban jobs were
预期目标。
added, exceeding our goal of
12月
11
末
million.
啊城镇调查
By
失
the
业率
end
呢
of
是
December,
5.5%，
the surveyed
比上月
unemployment
呢也
rate
下降了
in
0.2%。
urban areas was
消费价格呢
5.5%, down
所以
0.2
啊这
percentage
个温和
points
上涨。
over the previous month.
整个
CPI
CPI
went up
啊全年呢
mildly.
就是2%，
in
啊2%。
2020,
这是
CPI
在
went
全
up
球啊粮食
2%.
和能源啊这个价格啊大幅上涨
Given，
输入性通胀压
globally
力
food and
较
energy
大的情
prices
况
have
下，
hiked, and
我们国家的价格形势啊保持平稳，
there was a relatively high
与
pressure
欧美啊
of
等主要
imported
经济体的
inflation.
高通胀啊
CPI
形成了一个鲜
in
明的
China
对比。另外呢，
was
就是我们
kept
的
at
国际
a
收支
mild
在
level,
持续
in
的
stark
改
contrast
善，
with high inflation in major
这个
economies,
全
especially in
年货
Europe
物
and
进
the
出口顺
US.
差比上年扩
The
大了
balance of payments continued to
35.4%，
improve.
这个
In
年末的
2022,
这个外汇
surplus
储备的
in
余
the
额
import and export
也
of
达到了
goods expanded 35.4%, and
3.1277 亿
our
美元，
forex
这是
reserve
位
at the
居
end of
世
the
界
year
第一。
stood at 3.1277 trillion US dollars,
产业发
ranking the
展
first in the
这
world.
个基础夯实，
Third, China's
这个
industrial
农业
development
是增产
has a solid
丰收，
foundation. We are seeing good agricultural
特别是
output.
粮食啊，
In
粮食生
particular,
产
on
实现
the
了
grain output,
19年丰，
we saw
粮食总产量
a bumper
达到
harvest for 19 consecutive years. Total grain
13731
output
亿斤，
stood at
这连续8年了，稳定在
686.55
1.3万亿
million
斤以上。
tons,
中国人的饭碗那是担得
over
更牢了。
650
那么工业的压舱石作
million
用啊
tons
也得到了有效的
for
发挥
8。
这
consecutive years. This
个
means
全
that
部工
we're
业增
keeping
加值
firmer
达
the
到
rice ball in our
40.2
own
万亿元，
hands.
制造业的
China's
增加值
industries
达到
have fully
33.5 万亿元。
leveraged its role as
都是
the ballast
世
for
界
the
的首位。
economy. The added
工业啊
value of all
对经济
industries and
增长的贡献
manufacturing
力
sector
达
were
到了36%，
40.2 trillion and 33.5 trillion
基础设施
respectively,
呢
topping
也
the
是
world.
日益
The
完
industrial
善。
contribution to the economy was
到2022年末
36%.
啊，全国
Our
铁路
infrastructure also continued
这
to
个营业里程
improve. By
达
the
到
end
了
of 2022,
15.5
total national railway
万
mileage
公里，
was
其中的高速铁路营业里程是
155,000
4.2
kilometers.
万
Of
公里，
that,
在
42,000
全世界
kilometers
也是遥遥领先。我们还
are
建成了
highway,
全球啊规模最大、
are
技术
high-speed
领先
railway.
的网络基础
This
设
is
施。
also the longest in the world. And on top
我
of
们
that,
工业
we've
互联
also
网
set up the
已经
world's
广
largest
泛地
and most
融入到
advanced
了
infrastructure
45
network.
个
Industrial
国民经济的
internet
大
have
类。
been applied in the 45 major
第四个
categories
表
of the
现呢
national
是
economy.
内需总量规模
Fourth, Domestic consumption continues to grow.
尽管呢遭受疫情的反复冲击啊，
Despite
这个
repeated
全年的
resurgence
社
of
会消费品
COVID-19,
零售总额
the
这个稳定在
retail sales of
44万亿
consumer
左右，
goods in 2022
其中
stood
的
at
网上
around
这个商
44
品零售
trillion
额
yuan, and of
达
that,
到了12万亿。
12
我们
trillion
国家仍然
yuan
是
come from
全
online
球
retail
第二
sales.
大
China
消费市场
remains the
和
world's
第一大
second largest
网
consumer
络零售
market
市场，
and the
这个
largest
超大规
online
模的
retail
市场
market.
优势依然
The
明显。
advantages of China's
那么
super
固定资
large
产投资规模
market
呢，也是
remain clear.
突破了57
Investment in
万亿，
fixed assets
比上年呢增
exceeded
长5.1%，
57
增
trillion
速呢
yuan,
这个比
stood at
2021年
57.2
加
trillion
快了
yuan,
0.2个
up
百分点。这个
the
为
growth rate
经济的持
is
续
up
增长
0.2 percentage
提
point
供
over
这个有力的
2021,
支撑。
and this has offered a
第五
strong
个表现呢
underpinning
是改革
for
创
the
新啊，
continued
这
growth
个
of the
持续
economy.
的在深化
Fifth,
这个放岗服的改革持续
reform
推
and
进，
innovation
营商
have
环境呢
deepened.
也在不断的
We've continued to
改善。
improve government functions,
要
the
素市
business
场化配
environment,
置这个
and
综合改革啊，试点工作
steady
在稳步
progress
实
was
施，
made in
高
piloting
标准的
the
市场
market allocation
体
of
系
production
加快
factors.
建设，
A
为
higher
市场主
standard
体的发
market
展
system has
创
been
造了
built, and all these
更加有
provided
利的
good
条件。
conditions for the growth of
2022
market
年末啊，
entities.
我们全
By
国
the end of last year,
登记在册的市场主体啊，
the
达到
number
了
of registered market
1.69亿户，
entities was
其中呢，个体工商户
169
是
million,
1.14
and
亿
of
户。
that, 114
创新
million
驱动
are
的发展
household
战略
businesses.
在深入的
The
实施，
strategy of
新动的
innovation-driven
引领作
development
用
continue
在
to
日
be
益凸显。
implemented, and new growth
2022年
drivers
规模以上
have
高
been
技术
further
制造业增加
leveraged
值
in
比上年
2022.
是增长了
The added
7.4%，
value of high-tech manufacturing of
快于
enterprises above
全部规
designated
模
levels
以上工业
went up
是
7.4%,
3.8个百分点。
higher than the
那么实现
3.8
网
percentage
上
point,
的
3.8 percentage
商品
points
零售
higher
啊，
than that of all
这个占
industries.
消费品零售总额的
The
比重
retail sales
是
of physical goods
27.2%，
online
比上年呢又提高
took
了
up 27.2%
2.7
of the retail sales of
第六
consumer
呢是
goods, up
高水平的
2.7
开放，
percentage points
这个
over
扎实
the
推进。
previous year.
这
Six,
个在世界经济
we've
啊
continued
下行压力加大、
our high standard
全球
opening
贸
up.
易增长动能趋
Against
缓的背景下，
More
我
downward
们
pressure
加
on
快
the
推进
global
高水
economy,
平的
slower
对外开放，
momentum in the growth of
支
global
持企
trade.
业稳
China
生产、
continued
稳
to
订单、
advance high
扩市
standard
场、
opening up,
外贸、外资
and we've supported businesses to
较快的
keep
增长。
production and order
这个
stable
货
and to
物贸易
expand
总额呢
markets.
是再创
Thus,
新
we
高
are。seeing
这个
we're
货
seeing
物
more
贸易
growth
总额
in
突破
foreign
了
investment
40
and
万亿
trade.
达到了
Trading goods
42.1万亿
also
比上年
reached
增
a
长
new record
7.7%。
high.
我们的服务贸易也有一个
The
较快
number
的增长。
exceeded 40 trillion
这个
yuan
1
for
到
the first
11
time,
月份啊，
reaching 42.1 trillion yuan, up
进出口总额
7.7%.
达到了
Trading services
5.4万亿
also saw faster
5.4
growth.
万亿元，
From January to
同比增
November
长
last year,
是15.6%。
trading services
那么吸
totaled
引外资
5.4 trillion
在
yuan,
逆
up
势的增长。
15.6% year
良
on
好的
year.
经济发展
More
前
foreign
景和不断
investment have been
优化
drawn
的
to
营商
China.
环境
The good economic
这个使我
prospect
国啊
and
继
a
续
business
保
environment
持
that
为
continues
全球
to
投资
improve
兴业的热头，
has helped
1到
China to
10月份
remain
呢，
a much
我
sought
国
after
实际使用外
destination
资
for
是
global investment. From January to
1561亿
November
元，
last year, total
按
paid
可比
in
口径
foreign
呢，
investment
同
was
比增长是
1.1561 trillion
这
yuan,
个
up
已经啊
9.9% on a
这个
comparable
2021
basis.
年的全年啊，这
And
个
paid
外
in
商投资
foreign
的总额
investment
啊，实际使用外资啊，也创
exceeded
了
that
历
of
史的新
2021,
高。
a new record high.
第七呢是民生保障啊
Seventh,
是
more
有
effective
力有效。
safeguards were provided to meet people's needs.
在我们坚持啊，在发展中啊，这个保
While promoting
障和
development,
改善民
we've
生
stayed committed
千
to
方百计
protect
的
and
增
ensure
加
people's
居民
lives,
收入啊，
and we've,
持续的强化民生领域的投入，
as a result,
切实
people's
啊
income
都劳
has
这个
grew.
民生的这个
More
体
input
现。
has been made to improve
收入
people's lives,
是
and their
稳定
basic
增
needs
长
are better met.
刚才
First, a
啊
steady
我们也报
growth
告
of
了
personal
实
income.
际增长
As I've
2.9%，
said,
与经济增长呢是
Disposable
基本
income
同
last
步。
year was up
那么政府
2.9%,
对居民的
basically in
收入保
tandem
障
with
加强，
economic growth.
这个
The
去年啊
government has also
全国居
provided
民人均
better
转移
protection
净
to
收入
people's income.
比上
Last
年
year,
啊
the net
增长
transfer income per
5.5%，
capita was up
是快于啊全部
5.5%,
啊居民的
higher
收入的这
than
个
the
增
growth
速。
of personal income. More investment have been made to improve people's lives. Last year, investment in social sectors was up 10.9%, and of that, investment in house was up 26.1%, and investment in other social-related work was up 6.6 percentage points. Looking back, what we've achieved is no mean feat. Against changes in the past century and the pandemic, faced with multiple shocks caused by factors beyond expectations, what we've achieved did not come easy and is the result of hard work. We've been able to achieve this because of the strong leadership of the CPC Central Committee with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, because of the guidance of socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era, and because of the collective efforts of the whole party and of all Chinese people of all ethnic groups. These achievements fully attest to the significant advantages of China's socialist system, of the strong resilience and vitality of the Chinese economy. While acknowledging the good work we've done, we also need to be aware that the international environment continues to be complex and fluid. The momentum of global economic growth is slowing down, and outlook on global trade is less than optimistic. The world may face possible stagnation. Domestically, China's economic recovery is not solidly based yet. Businesses are still facing difficulties in their operation. Science and technology innovation is not enough. People in difficulty are still having trouble with finding jobs. Thus, more arduous efforts need to be made to deliver better economic performance. Thank you.
这边吧，第3排这位男记者，对，对。
日本共同社的质量提问。
Kyoto News.
对2023年经济目标经济前景。
What's your view on China's economy in 2023? What are the targets China's recently reopened its economy after it has relaxed COVID policies? What will be the effect on that? Can you repeat your question, your first one? What are the targets for China's economic growth in 2023, and what's the outlook? And my second question is on reopening.
开放的经济开始复工复产这个方面的效果是如何？这是第2个问题。
好，这个谢谢你的提问啊。
Thank you for your question.
2023年是全面贯彻落实。
The year 2023 is the first year to fully implement the decisions of the 20th National Congress. It is also a key year in implementing the 14th five-year plan. The external environment remains complex, and there's greater risks of stagnation worldwide. Chinese economic recovery is not solidly based. That said, Chinese economy has strong resilience, potential, and vitality, and the fundamentals sustaining its long-term growth has not changed. Resources, production factors, and conditions are there to sustain our economic growth. As China's COVID containment has entered a new stage, as relevant policies continue to be implemented, life and work in China are expected to be resumed at a faster pace, and the inner growth drivers of China's economy will continue to grow. So overall, in 2023, the goal for China's economy is to achieve is to rebound
我们分析
overall.
23年的情况我们有
So
这么
looking
一
ahead
些
into 2023,
优势条件第
we
一
have
个
the
呢是
following
长期积累
advantages.
的
First,
这个物质基础
a solid
这个雄厚
material basis.
中国呢也是联合国产业分类中全部工业
China
门
has
类产
every
业配
industrial
套
category
最好的
that are listed
国家之一
under the United
产业的组织能
Nations.
力
We have a
和产业
complete
的韧性
industrial
强
system,
在全球产业分工体系和
and our
供应链
industrial
的
sector
体系当中
has a strong
占据
resilience.
着重要的地位
China takes up an important place in the global
基础
industrial
设
and
施呢
supply
也比较
chain
完
system.
善这个
China also has
应对国际供给体系
relatively
这个
complete
的波动
infrastructure
我们强化了
against
粮食能源
fluctuations
这
in
个
the
以及
supply
产业链供
globally.
应链等关键领域的
We've worked
这个安
to
全保障
strengthen
能
and
力建
ensure
设
the security of key
为应
areas
对这个外部的风
concerning
险
food,
挑
energy,
战
industrial, and supply
创造了
chains.
有利的条件
These have put us in a good place
第
to
二个呢
respond to external
是超
risks
大
and
规模
challenges.
的国内市场优
Second,
势明显
clear advantages of China's
我们有
super large
14
domestic
多亿人
market.
口
We are home to 1.4
新型
billion
工业化和
people,
城镇
and
化还在持续的推进
we are
有世界上最具潜
still
力的
pushing
超大
forward
规模市场
industrialization and urbanization. We have the
这是
world's
推动这个经济复苏的
super large
好转
domestic
的
market,
这个
and
强
this
大引
is
擎强大引
a strong engine to drive economic
第三
recovery.
呢就是我们
Third,
新动能的支撑作用
the
会进一步的
underpinning
增
role
强
of new
这个我
drivers
们
will continue to
深
be
入实施
enhanced.
创新驱动发展战
The
略
innovation-driven
着力强
development
化
strategy
国家
will
的
continue to be implemented,
战略科技力量
and China's science and
这
technology
个有效推
innovation
动
will be
新产
strengthened.
业快速的成长
Effective efforts will be
那么
made
这些呢都将为
to
经济
boost
的
the
运行
development of new
注入
industries, and all
新
these
的
will
这个
inject
动能
new driving forces
第四
into
个有利条件呢是我们
economic
坚持这个深化改革
into
开放
China's economy
的红
and
利
force.
会持续的释放
Dividends of China's reform and opening up will continue to
我
be
们坚持
unleashed.
和完善社会主义基本经济制
We
度
will continue to adhere to and
坚持
improve
两个好不
China's
动摇
socialist
加快
economic
建设
system,
全国统一的
stay
大市
committed
场
to
这个
encouraging,
深化
supporting, and
持续
guiding the
深化
development
方
of the
案
non-public
改革
sector while
这个
unswervingly
国际化
consolidating and
法
developing
治
the
化的
public
这
sector.
个
We
营商
will
环
continue
境
to improve
为各类
government
市场主
functions,
体
the business environment, and
创
provide
造
a
更加公
fairer
平的这个
environment
竞争环境
for all types of businesses.
第五呢是我们有利条件是我们的宏观
Fifth,
调控的经验丰富
we've gained more experience on macro
特
control.
别是当前我们这个物价还总体处在一个这
Overall,
个稳定的
prices in
可
China
控的
have been
这
kept
么一个状
stable.
态为我们
So given
这个
that,
多方面的储备使用相关的宏观调控政策工具
We
留有
have
了
quite
比
some
较好的这个
macro
空间
regulation policy tools in our
所以整
disposal.
体这个2023年中国的经济一定会
So in 2023,
整体这
I'm
个好转
confident that China's economy will
这个疫
achieve
情
overall
防控
improvement.
复工复产这个状况呢，我相信我们
As the
记者朋友
economy
们
has
都
reopened,
感受到
I
了
believe you've all felt
像北京
firsthand
我们
what are the good
这个
results of that.
出行
For instance, in
交通
Beijing,
拥堵现在已经出现了
now we are seeing more
这
traffic
个
jams
国内的
on roads.
航班这个已经
Domestic flights,
恢复到了2019年的80%以上
80% of domestic flights have been resumed back to the level, almost back to the level
恢
of
复都将给
2019.
我们
So
2023年
gradually
的经济增长
Life and work will be resumed, and
更
all
好的
these
条件谢谢
will provide
好，
good
请继续提问。
conditions for economic growth
现场有不
in
少记者在举手提
2023.
问，所以为了让更多记者有提问机会，请您提问的时候就问一个问题，谢谢。
Please ask one question at a time.
好，这边吧，第二排这位男记者。
Next question, please.
谢谢。路透社的就是数字显示，去年咱们这
From
个
Reuters.
全社会的零售总额是
Last
下降了
year's
0.2%，
retail sales of consumer goods was
下降
down
了1.8%哈。
0.2%. And another figure concerning retail sales was down 1.8%. What will China do to boost consumption, especially the consumption of, especially domestic consumption?
好，谢谢。
Thank you for your question.
这个消费啊，这个大家这个都比较
Consumption
关注。
indeed draws a lot of
这
attention.
也是这个扩大这个国内这个消费市场扩内需也
To
是我们
strengthen the
今年工作
domestic
的这个
consumption
重点。
market and expand domestic demand is also a priority of our work
去年
this
呢
year.
这个整个这个消费市场
In 2022,
确实是受到
the consumption
疫情
market
的这个冲
indeed
击比较大。
experienced some shocks from the pandemic,
接触性的
especially
消费
those that require
受到的限制
concentration
比
of
较多，
consumers and
对整个消
people
费
to
市
people
场
contact.
形成了比较大的冲击。
So there were some
另外
shocks
呢
to these areas.
居民的消费意愿
And the willingness
下
to
降。
spend is
不
also
敢消费不
weakening.
便消费的问题也
It
比较
is
突出。
It was
总
not
体
very
整
convenient
个全年的
to
这个社会消费品零售额
make
下
purchases.
降0.2%。
So we saw a 0.2% decline.
那么这个消费市场这个受疫情的这个短期扰动，应该来说是比较明显的比较明显。
The short-term disruptions
在这种
were
情况下这
easy to
个
see.
及时出台了一些
In
促
response,
消费的
we
这个政
introduced
策。
a timely
应该来说，
package
基本
to
稳
boost
住了国内
consumption,
的这个
which
消费市场
effectively
消费市场
stabilized
也
the
出
consumption
现了
market.
一些新的变化一些
There
新
have
的变
been
化
some positive
比如讲我们
changes.
整个市场的这个销售到了12月份它的
In
边际
December
就已经在改善改善。
We are already
12
seeing
月份当月
marginal improvement.
社会消费品零售总额下降1.8%。我们11月份
In December, it fell by 1.8 percentage point. In November, it was 5.9%. So you see the downfall
另外呢
narrowed by
一些
4.5
新
percentage
型消费
points.
这个
Some
发
new
展的比较
types
快
of consumption were
这个网上
growing
的
very fast,
这个零售这个占比
such
也
as
是
the
在
online
稳步地提
sales
升
of goods, which is taking a larger share
我们
of
也
total
通
sales.
报了这个数据2022
We
年
have said,
这个
given
整
you
个
the figures.
网上实物
In 2022, the
这个占比是
online
27.2%， 提
sales
高了
took up
2.7个百分点。
27.2% of total retail sales.
那么这个我们升级类的消费的需求也在持续的释放。
Consumption of upgraded
这些
products was also strengthened.
对于这是我们过去一年的一些消费的这样的一些特点。
So these are some of the new developments
今年
in terms of consumption.
2023年，
In
我
2023,
们对于中国的消费市场还是充满着信心。
we are full of
这
confidence
个
in
随着疫
China's
情防控
consumption market
这个进入
as
新阶段
the pandemic
正常的生产
prevention
生活
enters
秩
a
序恢
new
复
phase
和线下
and
消费场景加快拓展。
production and life
消费市场
returns to normal
是有
and
望
consumption market continues
逐
to
步恢复
expand.
逐步
We
恢复
expect a gradual
那么也有这么几个有利的
restoration
条
and
件。
improvement. There are
一个呢
also
是
a
我
number
国
of
居民
favorable
消费的
conditions.
潜力巨大。
First of all, the potential for consumer
那么实
spending
施
is
多亿人
strong.
口
We have more than 1.4 billion
本身就是一个就
people
有一个巨大的
who
这个消费
are
需求，
themselves
同时呢
represent
这个消费结
strong
构的这个升级
demand
这个总体的趋势
and
没有
they
改变
are
没有改变。
buying more
第二个呢是
upgraded
我们线
products
下
and
消费
services.
和服务消费这个正在逐步的恢复。
And we are seeing
那么随着
recovery
正常的
in offline
生产生活
consumption
秩
and
序加快恢
consumption in
复，
services
消费场
as
景
economy
的限
reopens.
制也将大幅度的
There
减
will
少。
be less
这个为服务消费线下消费的
difficulties in
恢复创造了
offline
条件。
consumption.
第三呢是新的消费热点
And
在
there
不
will
断
be
的涌
new
现。
areas in
互联网
terms of
加、
consumption.
数字加、
Internet
这
plus
些
digital
消费的
plus.
新模式，
These are all
这个
new
快速的
models
发展。
in
绿色消费、
consumption, and they are
健
growing
康消费、
fast. Green
文化消费
consumption, consumption
在比较
healthcare,
活跃。
And education is also
第
very
四呢，就是
active.
我们就业稳，
Fourth,
收入增
we have a
也有
stable
利于
employment
这个拉
situation,
动消费。
and we are
刚才
seeing
我们
increasing incomes.
这个
These
在
are
展
good
望
for
2023
driving
年
consumption.
这个中国经济
In
的时候也讲到，
2023,
这个中国2023年肯定经济会整
the
体好
Chinese
转，整体
economy
好转。那
will
么经济好转，
continue to
那么就业
improve and strengthen.
也会
As this happens, employment
相应的改善
and
收入
consumption
居民的收
will
入也会有
also
相应的提
improve
高
and
这
incomes
样
will
有效
rise.
的带动
All this will contribute to
提高居民的这个消费能力
stronger
这个消费意愿。
capacity and willingness of the people to
在去年这个年底的时候
spend.
国家呢也下发了
At the end of
或消
last
费
year, the
和内
government
需的
also
这个
released
中长期的这个规
a
划，
mid to long-term program on expanding
扩大国内
consumption
市场
and
促进
domestic
消费
demand.
也进行了从这个扩大就业
It includes
提高收入改善收
multiple
入分
measures
配
in improving
等等
employment
收入分配
incomes
格
and
局
consumption
这个
and improving the
这个便利
consumption
化的
pattern and to
消费
provide
场
more
景
conditions
把供给扩大内需和
for
深化
consumption.
供给侧结构性改革结合等等
It will also
做了一
integrate
系
these
列的
measures with
这个安排做了一些
supply side
那么
reform.
这样的一些促消费的
These
这个
measures,
政策这个实施
as they are being
将
implemented,
不断的
will
提高
continue
这个居民的消费能力
to
这个整体
make the Chinese people
消费市场
more able
这个
to
消费规模都
spend
将
and
这个稳步地
enlarge the
恢复
consumption
和
market.
这个提升还有你提到我们这个三大这个产业的这个三大需求
In
的
your question,
经济的这个贡献对经济
mentioned
的贡献
the contribution to the economy from the three driving
我们统
forces
计了最终消费支出、资本形成、货
in
物
terms
和
of
服务进出口
consumption,
的
capital
去年
formation, and
分别贡献
imports and exports of goods.
这
They
个
each
拉动
contributed
经济增长
to the general economy
最终消费支出是1个百分点，
by 1
这个资本形成呢
percentage
是1.5个百
point,
分点，
1.5%,
这个货物和服务进出口净额是0.5个百分
and 0.5%
点，
respectively.
对经济增长的这个贡献率呢
So their contribution
最终
to
这个消费支出呢是
the
32.8%，
economy
这个资本形成呢是
from
50.1%。
consumption, it was 3.8%. From capital formation, it was 50.1%. And from trade in services, it was 7.1%. Thank
好，
you.
请继续提问。
There was a press conference on China's economic performance in the year 2022. Now, for more insight, let's cross live to Mr. Chu Qiang from Renmin University of China. Mr. Chu, China's GDP reached 121 trillion yuan in the year 2022, grew by 3% from the year 2021. What do you make of these two figures?
Well, I think Chinese economy is still showing very large resilience, and it's one of the most matured production system in the whole world. And also, probably have heard the data that China, not only from the manufacturing sector, but also from the food production, agriculture sector, is also making consecutively the harvest, which shows that in China itself are maintaining its power, even though we're facing the potential recession of the whole world recently, and we have turmoils over the whole world. But China has maintained its stability economically, politically, and also it shows that China still have a potential in the future.
What do you mean by potential? Because when you're using the word resilience, obviously it means that many challenges and risks ahead. Let's talk about inflation. The CPI grew by 2% in the year 2022. Do you think this year China will face more pressure on this particular regard?
I don't think inflation will going to be a problem for China, neither for the whole world, because in this coming year and in the 2024, I think the whole world theme is to face the deflation. For China, obviously, 2.8 2% around the inflation, I don't think this is something we can call it high inflation. Actually, we're actually want to make it a little bit higher, 3% or 4%. Probably is going to be more proper for current Chinese situation. And for the USA and for Europe, they're facing the recession ahead of them. So, and also we're witnessing the drop of the raw materials, the drop of the energy prices. And both in Germany and in America, their inflation data are shrinking very fast. So I think fighting against the deflation is going to be the problem for the whole world in future years. And we're going to need more of the surplus stimulus for our economy.
What about jobs? Latest official figures show that 12.06 million jobs were added last year in China, surpassed the original goal of 11 million. But we notice that the unemployment rate in people aged between 16 to 24 was 16.7%. What do you make of this figure?
Well, I think this is something we call serious short-term impact from the COVID. Because of the COVID, everybody can see, and also you probably see the retailing's share in the whole society has also been dropping. We're just considering one thing. First of all, this data reflecting the past, which means what happened, it's done. And also considering Chinese whole economic picture, 2022 comparing to 2019, what's the major difference? We don't see a major drop in the population. We don't see the major changing of the fundamentals. But why it dropped that much? I think only thing explainable is the COVID. And this barrier has already been removed. So I think more optimistic I can see in the coming year 2023 and 2024. And this number is going to bounce back very, very quickly. And just take a look. Go to the tourism resort, go to a shopping mall. You can see people mounted and people see.
Well, what about long-term workforce? Because since you've briefly mentioned the birth rate in China last year entered negative territory, but you're implying that it's not something to worry about too much, because many people and experts are also talking about maybe it's time to overturn this negative trend.
Oh, yes, exactly. I think this number probably is the most intriguing of all. People see the major drop in the population's birth rate. Yes, it's bad. It's something we really need to worry about, and no doubt about that, because this is going to be a long-term trend, and if you want to reverse the trend, it's going to be a very long U-turn to pass through the bottom. But also, as I mentioned, you have to see the long-term view of this issue. And first of all, as I still mentioned, what's the difference between 2019 and this year, or in the past year, 2022? What's the major difference? Even though we have aging problem for probably over past 10 years or 5 years. Why birth rate dropped that fast only in 2022? I think COVID is still the short-term impact that we can call about. As I mentioned, last year, because of the COVID infection and afraid of that, and worrisome to worry about the troubles to go to hospital, many women potentially to get pregnant or give birth to children, they are afraid to go to the hospital, so they delayed their birth plan. And I think after we remove this barrier and after we see the COVID is gone, and more of the people, more of the families are going to putting back the plan of the births back on the table. That's going to be a sure deal. And also, probably if you view the culture of China, this nation can last so long for 5,000 years is because its nation spirit is also very resilient. And after each of the major plague or major pandemic, we see, first of all, the drop of the birth rate and then the bounce back the birth rate.